Hey guys, it's Quinn in another viewer-requested video. Today we're taking a look at the most overrated and underrated films in the James Bond series, and let's start with the fun ones first. When looking at what are the most overrated Bond films, I've narrowed it down to three that I think get way too much love for what they really deserve. None are bad, and number one is a film that I quite enjoy, but all of them get way more credit than is needed, and so I'm just giving them a little reality check. And with that, number three, For Your Eyes Only. My very first video on this channel basically started with a rant on this film, so hopefully this isn't a surprise to you guys, but I've just never really understood why For Your Eyes Only is given so much love. Yes, is it well made? I guess so, but this isn't art house, and if you're getting down to the nitty-gritty of it, this film is just really boring. The whole plot revolves around a MacGuffin, and when it gets destroyed, it's supposed to be some powerful moment going into slow motion, but honestly, I'm just kind of happy that the whole film is over. Besides Columbo, this film really has nothing going for it, and I don't know how anyone could point to this as anything more than a mediocre Bond film. Number two, Dr. No. It's vanilla. That's the problem with it. This has been said by more than just me, so I don't want it to sound like these aren't my views, but it is undeniable that everything in this film has been redone, but better in later Bond films. How Coral Jr. appears in Live and Let Die, and that's just an example of how replaceable everyone in this film is. Sure, Connery is great, and this film is fine for what it is. It's just, in comparison to the rest of the series, this film is kind of weak. Honey Rider doesn't do a damn thing instead of just stand there. At least Goodnight and Golden Gun tries to do something. Felix Leiter is average. Dr. No is average. And even the Spectre plan feels small, in scope to everything else in the Connery era. Yes, this is the first film in the series, so it has to get some credit as being a good Bond film. I'm not denying that. But for anyone who says this is one of their favorites, not the best, but one of their favorites, I just don't see how. Number one, Thunderball. I like this film. I really do. I think it's funny, but it's a bad film. It's stupid. It's cheesy. It's slow as hell at times, and honestly, that's why I love it. The raw entertainment factor is there. It's just like the other two on this micro list, it's hard for me to describe this as anything more than it really is, a guilty pleasure film. I enjoy it, no doubt about that, but for me, the underwater scene sort of sums it up. Yes, it's fun to watch if you don't really think about what's happening, but if you're someone like me who has to nitpick the hell out of it, you begin to see that there really isn't much to it. For example, Largo looks like a really cool villain, but if you think about it, he sucks. It's fun, I like it, but it is in no way as good as so many people, including myself back in the day, make it out to be, and that is why, for me, it is the most overrated Bond film. Now, with all that excitement done, time to play nice. For an underrated Bond film, I'm looking for a film that is clearly either a great film or one that people can get a lot of joy out of, but people just seem to, largely ignore. These are the diamond in the rough films, films that by themselves would get credit for being at least fun for its year, but got buried in the ether of the Bond series. Or, to put it simply, films that get a lot of hate for no reason. So with that, let's crack the top five. Number five, Spectre. Granted, this film is somewhat new, so I don't think an opinion about it has been set in stone yet. But what I've heard overwhelmingly is that this film is boring. And I've noticed that, especially in the Craig era, the films have been getting a lot of scrutiny for somehow being this, especially Skyfall for some reason, but I don't understand how people cannot be entertained by this. Are there parts that are slower? Sure. Are there bits that are stupid? Of course, it's a Bond film, but the blanket that this film has gotten as slow just doesn't make sense to me. Perhaps it might have been that I was just very pumped for this film, and Spectre in particular was directed more towards the fans than the general audience, but even still, there's a lot here to love. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying the villains could have been done better and been in the film more, but this film, as a throwback to Connery more years, I think got the job done. Many people just don't see it that way. Number four, Octopussy. One of my favorites in the series. I think many people just miss the point of this film. It's called Octopussy. It's supposed to be stupid as hell. No one in their right mind would make a film where a lady says, sexually I may add, that she has a quote-unquote little octopussy, and at the same time try to act like it's a classy art house film. It's supposed to be stupid. That's what makes it so much fun. You can hate the film. That's fine. I completely get that. I'm personally not a huge fan of Moonraker, so I understand anyone completely if they don't like this film. But I feel like people write off Octopussy as goofy and therefore throw it off as immediately a B-rate Bond film. But unlike something like Moonraker, which is simply a cash grab at Star Wars, or Die Another Day, which was basically a montage of the best Bond moments, the very essence of Octopussy is to be the ultimate, ridiculous, stupid Bond film. Sure, it's not a work of art, but it's supposed to be entertaining, nothing more. Stop being sticklers. Just have fun with it, for God's sakes. Number 3, The World Is Not Enough. Similar to Octopussy, actually, I just don't think people are willing to embrace this film. Granted, it's a common theme here. It's not perfect, but this film has the balls to do a lot of things, and I think it deserves credit for that. It actually brings back a Bond ally in the form of Zukovsky. M does something. The villain is a female who Bond falls for. The henchman is a weird, almost superpower. The list goes on. Again, I'm not saying it's a thing of beauty, but at this time in the series, nothing really new was happening, and so for the series to try to mix it up was something that I appreciate watching. On top of that, it's a fun film. The plot is interesting enough and has a nice large scope. I feel like Denise Richards adds, a little comic relief, and Brosnan is at his best here. It's a fun film that everyone absolutely hates it, but I just don't understand how it could be rated near the bottom when this film doesn't have, at least for me, any glaring problems. Sure, the Bond girl isn't the most serious of premises, but just like Octopussy, that's the whole point. It's supposed to be ridiculous, and I'm happy they went for it. Number 2, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I think we can all agree on this one because besides actual Bond fans, I don't think anyone knows this film exists, much less the significance it has on the entire series, which I think is a bummer. It's no Dr. Zhivago, but as a Bond film goes, this is pretty much as good as you're gonna get in terms of trying to create characters that have actual depth while at the same time being an action film. When I was younger, I hated this film because it is undoubtedly slow, but as years have gone on, I've grown to see that what makes this film great is the fact that it actually takes time to develop characters. Tracy's without a doubt the most interesting Bond girl in the series. Her father's one of the better allies in the series, and although Lazenby isn't the greatest of actors, we at least get to see a sensitive side that has not really been repeated since. Because of all of this, you would think that Secret Service would get credit alongside From Russia with Love and Goldfinger's the best the series has to offer. But besides a few high-level critics, I never find anyone really giving this film credit and the love that it deserves outside of the Bond universe, which I think is a shame. Number 1, The Living Daylights. Now, the reason this wins is because, as without a doubt the best Bond film from The Spy Who Loved Me to GoldenEye, and sorry License to Kill fans, The Living Daylights is a film that many people do not even know exists. I'm going to botch the pronunciation, but Don Pfeff, one of my favorite reviewers from a few years ago, put it best when he said that this film by itself would have been one of the great Cold War action films of the 1980s, but inside the Bond series, it is buried to a point of obscurity. Yes, this film has problems. The two main villains try to outshine one another, and the main Bond girl is one of the worst in the series, at least in my opinion. But beside those flaws, the actual plot is one of the best. It was fun seeing MI6 actually take on KGB head-on. The backstabbing was fun as hell, and the plane fight near the end is one of the best fights in the series without a doubt. It's not perfect, but I'll say this much. Back in the day, I was able to name every Bond film except one. This was it, because as a 9-year-old, I was confused by it, so I just ignored its existence, and I feel like that is what has happened with this film. Everyone just ignores this film, even though it is clearly one of the most thought-out and smart films in the series. Not amazing, but that doesn't mean it should be non-existent outside of the Bond universe. Because of that, The Living Daylights is the most underrated Bond film. So what do you guys think? Have I been a backstabber to Thunderball? Are you glad I didn't take this as an opportunity to bash Quantum of Solace? Whatever it may be, leave it in the comment section below. And as always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.